Why is talking about mental health so important? What should we do to protect our mental health during this COVID pandemic? And if we are suffering emotionally and we need immediate relief, what should we do? In this video, psychologist Dr. Anaga Bhave will answer all these questions and much more. So make sure you watch this video till the end. Hey guys, this is Ritika and welcome to my channel Life with Coach Ritika. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that every time I upload a video, you get a notification. Before we start our discussion on mental health, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Anaga Bhave. She is a psychologist based out of Nagpur. She got her bachelor's degree from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, and her master's from Columbia University, New York. She comes from a family of mental health professionals. Her father and her sister are both psychiatrists and they work together in Nagpur. Today, in her own practice, Anaga deals with clients with varied backgrounds and different issues, but the agenda of spreading mental health awareness and creating a society which is more empathetic and aware is what drives her the most. During this lockdown, Anaga has been conducting online therapy sessions for her clients all over the country, and I have added her contact details in the description below. If you are having mental health issues or dealing with difficulties in life and you seek help, I have also added helpline numbers in the description below. Feel free to take a note of them. Alright guys, let's jump into the questions.
So the first question I'm going to be answering today is, why is mental health so important? Just a few days ago, I was reading a research conducted by the Lancet in India that said that in 2017, 1 in 7 Indians suffers from some kind of a mental health issue, ranging from mild to really severe clinical problems. That is almost 190 million people. So then we ask ourselves, if we don't talk about this extremely prevalent yet sensitive topic, that's 190 million Indians alone suffering in silence behind closed doors. And trust me, these numbers are still underreported because there are a lot of people who don't have access to treatment, whose problems never get reported, and they fly under the radar of these reports and surveys. So even though it sounds like a huge number, there's still more people out there whose mental health is compromised. Not just that, but if you have any kind of a mental health distress, especially the more severe cases, you'll notice that it pervades every area of your life. So it can affect everything from your daily living, of your sleep, your behavior, your appetite, your socializing, to your relationships, and even your work, your career, and ultimate productivity. So when something is so pervasive and damaging, and it really chips away at your quality of life on a daily basis, it's clear enough that all these issues really need to be spoken about. They really need to be discussed, and that's why I think mental health is so important. So we're talking about how important mental health is and how prevalent mental health issues are, but there is still a taboo and a stigma around this topic. One of the reasons is that back in the day, when there was a lot of advancement happening in medicine and the human physiological and biological problems, not enough emphasis was placed on the mind. As a result of that, funding in mental health research was always less compared to, disproportionately less compared to funding for physiological health. And because of that, today we see that the awareness around the topic is really poor. So our knowledge about the human mind is far less than our knowledge about the human body. Not just that, but there are a lot of societal and cultural reasons why mental health continues to be a taboo. Now, I grew up in India, and I for sure know that I heard a lot that depression was a result of somebody not having enough willpower, or depression would happen, but you should be able to pull yourself out of that, or you're just not mentally strong enough to overcome your anxiety. Now, the minute we associate that a person has a certain choice or control or autonomy over making their mental health issues go away, you're assuming that they are weak if they're not able to do that. And that's where the shame comes in, right? But in reality, there's so many factors which are actually outside the person's control, which can result in them developing a mental illness. One of them, and the biggest one, is your genetics and your hereditary. So if I have a blood relative or a family member who has a psychological problem or a mental health issue, then I'm more likely to develop that too. or a neurochemical imbalance in my brain, or my childhood, or how my parents, what kind of an environment my parents created growing up. All of these things are outside my control, yet they are hugely impactful in my mental health, how emotionally stable or unstable I am. So the problem here is not just that, systemically on a larger level, mental health doesn't get the recognition and the attention that it should, but that also percolates into our day to day interactions. Mental health is not something that is a household topic in most of the houses till today. And even when it is discussed, there is awkwardness, shame, guilt, and superstition associated with it. All of these things combined make it a topic which is extremely stigmatized and continues to be a taboo till today. But hopefully, with these conversations, we're trying to break the taboo and the stigma that comes with mental health. So thankfully now there's a lot of research in the field of exercise and its effects on our mind or mental health. We know that there is a short-term effect for sure, and I think a lot of people might be familiar with the term endorphins. So endorphins are a kind of chemical that are released in our brain that they're also known as happy chemicals, because quite literally they make a person feel happy, and they lose the sensation of pain. So anybody who does high intensity workouts, aerobics or cardio would notice a certain lightness or feeling energized or feeling really positive after a workout. That's the result of the endorphins on your brain. Other than that, people who are regular with their exercise are 26% less likely to develop depression than those who don't. Also, people who have been working out regularly are more likely to get out of chronic depression than those who don't. So this goes to show that it has a both, day-to-day kind of an effect, but also a cumulative effect at the end of, many years of practicing or working out. Not just that, but there are some other chemicals which are also released in your brain after you exercise, like your serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine get, they're boosted. And these are the chemicals which are responsible for improving your attention, focus, as well as your mood. So as a therapist, I know that if I have a client who has mild depression, anxiety, or problems related to their attention, like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, exercise is most definitely part of the treatment plan. What's even more interesting is that some of these chemicals that are released in our brain after we exercise are exactly the chemicals that are prescribed by psychiatrists for cases of mild depression. So it's basically saying that after working out for half an hour, 45 minutes, and after taking an antidepressant pill, it's going to have the same effect on you. So I know that during the pandemic, a lot of psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists have probably come out to talk about the do's and don'ts of what you can do in a lockdown to protect your mental health. But I'm going to start off first of all by saying that at a time like this, it's okay to not be okay. I think there's too many things that can stress a person out during a time like this. So many things, from your economic hardships, professional hardships, worrying about a loved one, worrying about yourself, your own health. Maybe you're already suffering, so worrying about the outcome of treatment. There can be many different things that can stress you out. And so it's completely okay to have unproductive days. Really, please try not to compare yourself to people who seem to be super on top of things, who seem to be very productive and proactive. You're only getting a glimpse into a person's life, especially if you're seeing them on social media. But it's definitely important not to compare yourself to those standards. So that's the first thing. Another thing that I'm seeing is that all of us, including myself, I've had some of these really catastrophizing thoughts, like, oh, my parents are in a high risk category, and they're working, so they will most definitely get the virus. Or I have thought things like, now the lockdown is over, people are moving around more, I've seen outside people are not wearing masks, that means I'm definitely going to get the virus. Now what is happening when I think like this is, first of all, I'm getting fixated on a future outcome that hasn't happened yet, and that outcome is negative, so it's obviously creating stress and anxiety. I would really encourage all of you that if, like me, you have experienced these thoughts, do try to shift the focus away from this hypothetical outcome to practical, pragmatic efforts that can be exerted right now. So instead of thinking my parents are definitely going to catch the virus, try to think I'm going to educate them on all the precautions that they can take, and I can make sure that they amp up their efforts to protect themselves from catching the virus. And I'm going to do the same thing for myself. By doing this, you've basically just shifted your focus from something that hasn't happened yet and may never happen to something that you can realistically do to get a positive outcome. But just, your thought process can make a huge difference. But along with that, behaviorally also, definitely do try to maintain a routine as much as possible. I know that a lot of people are sleeping really late and waking up really late because you don't physically have a place to be at in the mornings anymore. But the lockdown isn't going to last forever. And when it does lift and when it's time to go back to our regular lives, it's going to be difficult to unlearn these new habits that we've learned during the lockdown. So just sort of having that long-term point of view there, and also trying to learn new hobbies, new interests, new skills, developing new skills during this time can make you shift your focus from, oh, this is such a terrible thing that has happened, to this is an opportunity where I can make the most of my time, which is something I don't get to do. Also, really support, communicate, be there for loved ones, and also reach out if you really feel like you need that help. So I think, pandemic or no pandemic, if you are somebody who is struggling with something, especially if it's something very situational, temporary, or of a mild nature, by all means, please reach out to somebody who you're close to, somebody who is part of your support system, somebody who will listen to you without any judgment or without dismissing it. If you think it is not just a situational or a temporary problem and it happens to be a more chronic or consistent problem, then, and if you find yourself not really having anybody to talk to, then please reach out to a therapist or a psychologist. That's what they are there for. In fact, psychologists and therapists are generally trained to deal with a gamut of problems, right, from mild to severe. And if for whatever reason the problem is outside of their purview, then they know who you should be seeing and who to refer you to. So definitely see a therapist. And of course, if you don't have access to a therapist, or if you're not comfortable with an online session, which is something, by the way, a lot of psychologists, including myself, were doing at this time because of not being able to go to our clinics and our practices. In case you don't have access to an online session or a face-to-face session, there are a lot of mental health helplines that operate pan-India nowadays. So if you feel like you'll be more comfortable and you need immediate relief would be, you feel like you're in a very psychologically vulnerable position and you feel like you're going to do something to yourself, you're going to harm yourself, or you're going to harm somebody else. Just a phone call to a helpline can stop all of that from happening. In case anybody is interested, there will be helplines linked in the description of this video. So I think social media is both a good and a bad thing. There are a lot of good things, of course, that come from social media. I would be lying if I say I've never been motivated by a fitness trainer to work out. It's definitely the case. I follow a lot of fitness trainers because I like looking at their workouts and it gives me something to push myself for. But we definitely can't ignore that social media also does a lot of harm, especially to certain vulnerable populations like teenagers and young adults, or people who are facing a crisis in their own life. Sometimes the perception of their misery can get heightened when they look at people who have this sort of spotless and perfect lifestyle. But it's not just young adults and teenagers who are susceptible. Even as full-grown adults, sometimes there is this comparison that triggers when you see this, maybe when you see a social media influencer living a certain lifestyle that seems really perfect. My biggest caution to anybody on social media is please take it with a pinch of salt. It's actually sometimes more ingrained in our minds than we realize, the instant comparison that takes place. It's more ingrained in our minds to immediately think, oh, I wish I had that, or that looks really good, why can't my life look like that, or look at these people, they keep traveling, I wish I could travel all the time, right? And I know for a fact that there are some responsible influencers who've spoken about how they only put up only one aspect of their life or only the best aspects of their life. So when you look at social media and you're consuming too much content that kind of creates this false notion of what is perfect, you tend to compare your life to that, and most likely you're going to feel like your life is falling short of those benchmarks that you're seeing on social media. So when you see that your life is falling short, it can lead to a host of problems like low self-esteem, negative body image, depression, anxiety, and just a general feeling of inadequacy and being really harsh with yourself. So it's really important that whatever we see on social media is taken with a pinch of salt, and not everything is to be believed. We have to remember that this is just a profile that somebody has put up, and they're completely in control of what they can put out there. So they're curating the best of the best and showcasing you as part of their lives. So I think as a society, there's so much that we can do. Even if all of us individuals of one generation collectively decide that we want to bring about a change in the conversation around mental health, overall it can have a huge impact. And the way I see it, we just have to follow three things. The first thing is educate yourself and create an awareness in your own mind, first of all. Thankfully, we're in an age today where information is at our fingertips. So even if you're not the kind of person who wants to sit and read books, just on Instagram, if you type hashtag mental health matters, you'll probably see thousands of posts that can help you understand the mind of a person who is mentally disturbed, or that can open your eyes to all the problems that exist or how they manifest. The second thing would be to protect and support. So if you have somebody who comes up to you and a friend or a family member, and they tell you that they've been depressed, or they tell you that they have ADHD or OCD or PTSD, any of these mental health issues, it's so important not to judge, dismiss, or criticize the person who is coming forward with these problems. First of all, it's hard enough as it is to become vulnerable and to talk about these problems. Second of all, you're kind of making yourself naked in front of the other person by talking about something that is so private and personal. So your reaction in that moment can be extremely important in deciding whether that person will feel validated, or will they feel okay, will they feel supported, or will they feel like it was a bad idea to open up and to talk. And with this, I just want to give a disclaimer, because a lot of people, there's awkwardness and there's shame around this topic. You don't have to have the perfect answer. You don't have to say the thing that a therapist or a psychiatrist would say, but you just need to reduce the awkwardness. So you just need to validate the effort that the person has taken in speaking to you. And by doing that, you're protecting them and you're supporting them right then and there. So that's the second step. And the third step, I think, as a society that we have to do is not stop here, but actually educate those around us. So, for example, and I think a lot of people can attest to this, I've been hearing a lot about, people claiming to have OCD because they are really clean and because they're really organized. It's almost become like this glamorous pop culture thing to say when you want to say that you're a hyper clean person. Now, I take this as an opportunity as a therapist to explain to them that OCD is actually a really debilitating illness. It's actually, it's not glamorous at all. It can really significantly reduce a person's quality of life. And only those who struggle are the experts on their experience. So I take that opportunity to educate people, and I would invite everybody to do the same. If especially you're having a dialogue around mental health with your family and people of older generations who may not be as aware, who may be a little more dismissive about these things, take it upon yourself to have that tough conversation and showcase a more aware side of mental illnesses are to them.
I hope we have covered most of the important questions on mental health, and I'm really grateful to Dr. Anaga Bhave for taking time out of her busy schedule and helping us understand a little bit more about how to deal with mental health issues. Alright guys, this is the end of the video. If you liked it, make sure you hit the like button, and if you have any comments, comment below and I'm definitely going to get back to you. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe for more fitness and health related content. We'll be back next Sunday.